just keep talking. Just longer sentences so they can test you out.
One, two, three, four. 1, 2, 3.
I think we're okay now.
Tähendab, Mihkel, kus sa oled? Palun räägi veel. Eesti tõlge, palun.
Testing, testing.
Eesti keel tuleb praegu. Eesti keelt tahan. See on eesti keel. Eesti kanal on see, mis tuleb.
Head sõbrad, tõlkekontroll, head sõbrad, head sõbrad, head sõbrad.
Teeme niimoodi, et räägi sina nüüd inglise keeles ja Mihkel räägib eesti keeles.
This is the English channel. This is the English channel. English channel.
head ajakirjanikud.
Dear ladies and gentlemen of the press and everybody listening to us live. So welcome to Kadriorg, welcome to the press conference of the President of Estonia, Mr. Algaris, and President of Ukraine, Mr. Volodymyr Zelensky. It's a joint press conference. We'll start with the statements of the heads of state, and then we have a possibility for 2 questions. So we'd like to give the floor to the President of Estonia, Mr. Algaris. Mr. President, dear Volodymyr, we understand each other without words. Our peoples are united by similar history and understanding of what is happening today and shared vision of the future. Both Estonia and Ukraine are an inseparable part of the European space. I met Ukrainian war veterans in Narva, which is a border city of Europe. They told me that they are Europe's body armor, the bulletproof vest. Ukraine has kept dark brutality away from Europe, an imperialism that sees territory instead of people, a regime that recognizes only brute force, a power that is sustained by fear. What can Estonia do to support Ukraine? Ukraine's place is in the European Union and NATO. The promise of European membership cannot remain merely on paper. Estonia supports the rapid opening of all clusters in the European Union-Ukraine accession negotiations. This should happen already this summer. It should happen now, in June, because there are no longer any obstacles. For the people of Ukraine, membership in the European Union and NATO is not a distant hope, but a justified expectation. This is a clear objective that has united Ukrainians and has enabled them to keep the future in their own hands. For Europe and for the Euro-Atlantic area, Ukraine's accession represents an opportunity to become stronger. Second, it is also important to put pressure on the instigator of the war, initiator, the perpetrator of the war. This pressure must increase. This means ensuring compliance with existing sanctions and imposing stronger sanctions on Russian energy resources and their transporters. It is also important to pay attention to attempts to normalize Russia's participation in international life. Russians are trying gradually to sneak back into international sport and culture in order to soften negative attitudes towards themselves instead of acknowledging and bearing responsibility for the actions of their leaders. Ukraine has held the battlefield, weakened the energy sector, financing the war machine through long-range strikes, and made the war visible in Russia's major cities. Russia's position has weakened and its options have diminished. Russia's recent missile attacks against civilians and civilian objects may be interpreted as an attempt to destabilize the society, but it can be also seen as an act of desperation. As Europe's security is at stake, then Europe must be prepared at some point to sit at the negotiating table with a common mandate and jointly formulated positions. We agree with the principle formulated by the Ukrainians. Nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. Nothing about Europe without Europe. Or as the Prime Minister of Ukraine told me here in Kadriorg last week, it would be very strange if Europe were not seated at the table. In order to achieve a solution and ensure Europe's long-term security, of course, the United States would play an important role. One central issue is accountability for causing the war and the war crimes. Equally important is finding solutions regarding the deported Ukrainian children, whether through the international coalition, bilateral cooperation, or in international organizations. Thirdly, what Estonia and the rest of the democratic world can do is to learn from Ukrainians. We must engage in practical cooperation, gain new knowledge and experience. This applies particularly to Ukraine's rapidly developing defense industry, and also more broadly, how to make sure that economy and civilian life will keep functioning during wartime. Recent months have brought the war closer to us. We must strengthen societal preparedness and resilience across Europe and throughout the democratic world at large. The Nordic-Baltic cooperation format, which is NB8, is one example how countries can enhance their security together as a region. Dear Volodymyr, as Estonians, we are admiring the resilience of the Ukrainian people and you personally. You came here today with your wife, so now it is possibility for us to witness personally your resilience and your personal resolve. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, dear Mr. President. It's a great honor for me to be here together with the First Lady, to be your guest, and thank you very much for receiving our Prime Minister and her team. Today, we are meeting in a special format of cooperation, a format that's, in my view, always very effective. Ukraine and the Nordic-Baltic states. These are countries that have stood with us very, very consistently in a very substantive and truly friendly way. I thank you for such strong support across all of these years of this war for our independence and yours. I thank Estonia and you personally for organizing our work here today. We held our bilateral meeting with Estonia, and we also began our discussions with Finland, Latvia, and Sweden. Further bilateral meetings with other summit participants will follow, as well as a joint work with all of the NB8 countries and Ukraine. The key task today is to prepare for the negotiations and decisions that we all expect from the upcoming European Union, G7 and NATO summits. June and July of this year may prove decisive in many respects. First, there must be clear movement in diplomacy so that Russia does not believe that this war can still bring it anything. Ukraine's positions on the front line are strong. Russia is losing more than 30,000 soldiers every month, killed and badly wounded. Our impact on Russian logistics, Russian oil refining, and Russian military production is also significant. In temporarily occupied Crimea and in parts of Russia itself, there are already gasoline shortages, and in some parts of the country there is no reliable communication service. The Russian budget is full of breaches. All of this now needs additional political pressure to support it and to move Russia onto a diplomatic track. We discussed this the other day in the E3 format, today in our NB8 format, and we will continue discussing it at the EU summit, specifically how Europe should position itself in the negotiations and when genuine movement in the negotiations may become possible. Europe needs a real and strong voice in the negotiations and must be among those making decisions. America is ready to engage actively in diplomatic processes, and I discussed this yesterday with the envoys of the President of the United States of America. Second, air defense. This will remain our priority for as long as this war continues. Not a single day can be lost when it comes to protecting lives. Today, we had detailed discussions with countries that can help about exactly what is needed. This concerns both contributions to the Pearl program and our bilateral cooperation, including on anti-ballistic capabilities. Third, we are very much counting on strong political decisions from the European Union that can and should be taken already this summer. Ukraine has done everything necessary to open 6 clusters in the accession negotiations, and decisions on this should be taken at the upcoming EU meetings. There are no impediments. It's important that this progress is made, that the clusters are opened, and that the Russians also see that Europe keeps its promises and does not abandon its European interests. I ask you to continue supporting sanctions and introducing new packages. The EU's 21st sanctions package is needed. Today we also discussed with the fact that the Baltic Sea and the North Sea must not remain a free operating space for Russia's shadow fleet, and any decisions that reduce the activity of Russian tankers are decisions that work not only for the benefit of Ukraine, but for the benefit of all of Europe. Please continue to support these efforts. Thank you once again, esteemed Mr. President. Thank you for this meeting, for this visit, for the summit, and for your consistent and strong support to Ukraine and our people. Glory to Ukraine.
Now we can take a couple of quick questions. Tatiana Gasova, Estonian Public Broadcasting. The question is in Ukrainian.
Mr. President, in the last month, the Baltic states have been seeing drones in their skies, which became the reality, and it does influence our public opinion and our feeling of safety, not only Estonian citizens, but also citizens of Ukraine that have found temporarily shelter here or are living here permanently. Does Ukraine plan to do anything about it so that the attacks on Russian infrastructure bypass our skies? Thank you for this question. First and foremost, Ukraine will continue to respond to any attacks perpetrated by Russian Federation, and we will use our long-range sanctions in justified manner. We understand what Russia is doing. It wants to escalate the relationship within the European Union. For example, when we are responding to Russian strikes. And if in Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia's skies, Russian drones appear, we understand why. And when the Ukrainian drones appear, we understand what the Russians are doing. They can pull our drones off the course via using electronic warfare. What do you need for this? We've began working, and we have relevant experience with the countries of the Middle East, where we send our teams who have trained the personnel, taught them what to do, and these are quick and strong decisions. We did that in the Middle East, and it was successful. We're now ready to do this the same with our close partners in Europe. We can do that thanks to our fast-track procedure, drone deal. Drone deal is not only about purchasing something, it's about important things like we're discussing today, here now. So we're ready for this, to send our expert groups at any time, and we are already doing this, and we will be doing this with our close partners, and I can't disclose all details now, but I think it's one of the solutions.
Thank you very much, Radio Kuku, Timo Tarve. Thank you very much, Mr. President, for finding the time. I hope that your goals will be fulfilled. My questions is regarding peace negotiations with Russia. What kind of peace negotiations do you envision if you're thinking about your stronger position? If you were able to block Crimea, you would have a more strengthened position. So what do you think is the ideal solutions of the peace negotiations?
An ideal solution in peace negotiations is to end the war, to at least take the first step, a full and unconditional ceasefire. It's important. And then let the diplomats do what they were trained to do, as we say in Ukraine, sit and talk, do technical work. There are many experts, and a ceasefire is also a complicated process, and the President and I discussed this today as well. You can't just say that, oh, ceasefire, and tomorrow it starts working. Yes, it's a will and a decision, but today we're not standing like that with the enemy. There are such kill zones that are expanding. They're expanding as the drone technologies evolve. And let's say you have such kill zone, and somewhere on our temporarily temporary contact line. These kill zones, they're different here and there. So let's say that tomorrow we've said ceasefire. What will Russia do? We understand that clearly. If we don't have guarantors and monitoring of ceasefire, Russia will use this fact that a kill zone is no longer a kill zone, and they will approach by 20 kilometers. In certain parts of Ukraine, this constitutes major risks. So that's why we're saying ceasefire. On which conditions? Here are guarantors, list of partners, and they can bring in their monitoring missions and really control this, monitor this ceasefire. And we're ready for such, we're grateful for such readiness. So I believe that the first point is ceasefire. And just as I said, it's also not technically simple. And this is the first step. And other steps and the roadmap, how to end the war, let the diplomats hash that out. To have a ceasefire, I believe it would be better to have a meeting of leaders, Ukraine, Russia, and definitely Europe. Europe and preferably the United States. Why Europe? Because we are in Europe. You are now yourself giving examples when certain countries are suffering because of some cases with drones and etc. Because this is our land, this is our continent, and we must make sure that tomorrow we will have secure life. So these are countries that should be in negotiations with this important first step. Ukraine's will to achieve all of this is there. We will see whether Russia has its will. For now, they have not demonstrated that.
I will also briefly answer both of these questions, which we discussed with the President of Ukraine when we had a private question. The first, the drone question. Then Ukraine has the expertise, because we could see it also when we had our military exercises the spring storm. But what's going to happen next? Because we have shown that we can shoot the drones down with the planes. But that's fighter jets are very expensive. So that means we have to find a possibility to use the expert knowledge of Ukraine here. This technology and this opportunity is important to bring them here. But of course, as they are in war, then it's quite likely that these incidents will continue to happen. We have to take this into account. And I would recommend that our people would remain calm when we know that some of the drones get lost and end up in our territory. Now, second question regarding peace negotiations. Then Europe will continue working as Ukraine would like us to do. And if Ukraine wants three of us to be behind this table, then Ukraine, Europe, and Russia. But if the United States joins us, that's good, but that we were not going to have any separate negotiations without all the parties being involved. But that means we need to prepare for all of this today, to be ready for this moment, because it's quite likely that this summer we have a window of opportunity. So we can pressure Russia, we can use diplomatic channels, and that Russia will also come to the table to end the war, because the goal is to end the war, not that we'll just keep continuing the continuation war. Thank you very much for the questions, and this is the end of the joint press conference. Thank you all.